The night heat pressed heavy over Tucson, the kind that carried the smell of dust and exhaust of tequila spilled on cracked concrete. The neon cross above El Cielo bar flickered unevenly, throwing red light onto the street where Isabel Hart worked her third night shift of the week. Pouring drinks for men who never looked her in the eye. It was almost midnight when he walked in. She noticed him, first by the silence that followed, a sudden stillness that rippled through the noise. Even the jukebox seemed to hesitate. He didn't belong to this place. His shirt was too crisp, his boots too clean. But it wasn't his clothes that made people step aside. It was the way he moved, calm, slow, the kind of calm that came from power. Isabel wiped the counter with a damp rag, pretending not to stare. But he was impossible not to notice. Tequila, silver, he said, his voice deep. The kind that sounded like smoke. She poured without looking up, eyes tracing the tattoos that wound around his wrist, black ink lines disappearing under his sleeve. He slid a folded 100 across the bar without glancing at it. "Keep the change," he said. "You didn't even see how much it was," she replied. He smiled then, just slightly. "I don't need to." There was something about his eyes, dark, unreadable, but not cruel. The kind that saw everything and gave nothing back. She didn't know yet that his name was Gabriel de Leon, that people whispered it like a warning. She didn't know about the black trucks that followed him through the desert or the blood debts buried in the sand outside Nogales. All she knew was that for the first time in years, someone looked at her like she was real. He didn't leave after one drink. He stayed until last call, sitting in the corner booth, silent, watching the door. When she came to clean his table, he spoke again, softly, like a secret. "You shouldn't walk home alone," he said. She laughed under her breath. "You sound like my father." Maybe your father was right. Her apartment was only 6 blocks away, but the street between here and there was a maze of flickering streetlights and empty lots. Still, she'd never taken rides from strangers. Not since the night everything changed, the night the sirens wailed and her brother didn't come home. "I'll be fine," she said. "I always am." He studied her for a long moment, then stood, leaving his glass untouched. "No one's fine walking alone in this city." He left before she could answer. The next night he came back, and the night after that he never asked questions. Never flirted. Never told her why he came. Just sat in the same corner, ordered the same drink, and sometimes when the crowd thinned and the jukebox hummed a sad country song, he'd look at her like he could see the weight she carried. "Do you always watch people this way?" she asked once, half smiling. "Only the ones who try to disappear," he said. "Then you're wasting your time." "No," he said quietly. "I'm not." Something in his tone made her heart stutter. By the end of the week, everyone at El Cielo was whispering. The cook said he'd seen Gabriel's car, a black Cadillac, Escalade with tinted windows, parked across the street every night until dawn. The waitress said he carried no phone, no wallet, just a silver chain around his wrist engraved with a single word. Luz, Isabel told herself she didn't care. She'd had enough of men with secrets. Her brother had secrets too, and they'd cost him his life. But that Friday night, when the storm rolled in from the south and thunder shook the bar windows, she caught herself waiting for Gabriel. He came late, drenched from the rain, and for the first time, he looked less like a ghost and more like a man. His shirt clung to him, his hair dripping over his forehead. When he sat down, she brought him a towel from the back without thinking. "You shouldn't be here in this weather," she said. "You shouldn't either," he replied. "This place feels like trouble waiting to happen." "Then maybe we both belong here." He smiled, the corner of his mouth barely lifting. "Maybe." For a while they didn't speak. The rain filled the silence, beating against the roof like 1,000 restless hearts. Then she asked, "What's Luz?" He froze. His fingers brushed the chain around his wrist. "Someone I used to protect." "Used to?" "She's gone. I'm sorry." He looked up then, his eyes full of something she couldn't name. "Don't be." When her shift ended, the rain hadn't stopped. The city lights were blurred behind a curtain of water. Gabriel stood by the door, holding an umbrella. "Let me drive you," he said. She hesitated. The storm raged louder, wind howling through the empty streets. She thought of her brother, of promises broken and graves unmarked. But when she looked at Gabriel, something inside her cracked open. He wasn't asking out of pity. There was something else there, a quiet vow. All right, she whispered. His car smelled faintly of cedar and rain. The dashboard glowed soft blue as they drove through the flooded streets. Neither spoke. When he stopped outside her building, she turned to him. Thank you, she said. You shouldn't thank me, he replied. I told you, you'll never walk alone again. She smiled faintly. Is that a promise? He looked at her, and for a moment she swore the air between them trembled. It's a warning. That night, Isabel couldn't sleep. The rain eased into a whisper against her window, and she thought of his voice. Calm. Steady, dangerous. She got up, made tea, and caught her reflection in the glass. A woman who hadn't felt seen in years, staring back with eyes she barely recognized. When the headlights swept across her wall, she froze. Through the curtain, she saw the same black Escalade parked across the street. Engine off. Lights dim. Waiting. Her heart pounded. She should have been afraid. But somehow she wasn't, because deep down, she knew the danger had already chosen her, and somewhere in that rain-soaked night, under the hum of streetlights and thunder, Isabel Hart took her first step into a world she would never escape. Morning broke over Tucson with a pale orange sky and the smell of wet asphalt. The storm had left the streets glistening, puddles catching sunlight like broken glass. Isabel stood on her balcony with a mug of black coffee, watching the city stretch awake beneath her, buses hissing, dogs barking, people moving like ghosts through the steam that rose from the pavement. She should have felt peace. Instead, her chest throbbed with a quiet unease that refused to fade. The black Escalade was gone, but she felt him anyway, that strange pull. Like gravity shifting. By noon, the bar was quiet. Only two old regulars lingered, watching a muted TV that looped last night's local news. A car accident on I-19, another body found near the border. A fire downtown. The bartender, Jesse, leaned over the counter. Your friend hasn't been around today. Isabel didn't look up from the rag she was folding. He's not my friend. Could have fooled me. She ignored him. But when the door creaked open, she glanced up anyway, heart skipping for no reason she'd admit. It wasn't him. Just a delivery guy dropping off cases of beer. Still, she couldn't shake the sense that the world had tilted slightly, that something unseen was rearranging itself around her. When she stepped outside during her break, the sun was merciless. Heat shimmered off the pavement, and the smell of grease and metal hung in the air. A black SUV turned the corner 2 blocks away. For a heartbeat, she thought it was him again. But it kept going. You're losing it, she muttered to herself. She didn't know the truth, that Gabriel de Leon was closer than she could imagine, that his men were already watching from the shadows. That night, as she walked home, she took the long route past an abandoned church on Congress Street. A habit born of insomnia and a need for quiet. The building stood half-collapsed, its wooden doors hanging crooked, graffiti covering the walls like scars. That's when she saw him again. Gabriel stood beneath the streetlight, half in shadow. You shouldn't walk this way, he said. She flinched at the sound of his voice. You're following me now? I told you, he said. You shouldn't be alone. The words should have sounded protective. Instead, they felt like a cage closing in. Why do you care? She asked. He took a step closer. His eyes were darker than the night around them. Because someone else does. What does that even mean? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small photograph, creased, water-stained. He handed it to her. Her breath caught. It was her, taken from a distance through a bar window. The photo was recent, maybe 2 nights ago. Where did you get this? He looked past her, scanning the rooftops, the shadows. Someone's been watching you. Her stomach twisted. Is this a joke? Do I look like I'm joking? She could barely breathe. Who? He hesitated. Someone from your brother's past. The name hit her like a slap. My brother is dead. Gabriel's gaze softened, but he didn't look away. That doesn't mean his ghosts are. They ended up sitting inside the old church, the air thick with dust and memory. Candles still littered the altar, melted into shapeless forms. Rainwater dripped from a hole in the roof, echoing softly in the hollow space. Your brother worked with people who thought loyalty was worth more than life, Gabriel said quietly. He stole something from them before he died. They think you know where it is. I don't. Her voice broke. I didn't even know what he was into. He said it was just deliveries. He was trying to pay our rent. Gabriel nodded slowly. He meant well. But good intentions don't save anyone in this world. And you? What world are you in? He looked at her, not cruelly, but like he wished she hadn't asked. The one your brother tried to escape. She stared at him, realization sinking like a stone. You're one of them. I was. The silence that followed felt alive. Why are you telling me this? Because they'll come for you, he said. And I can't let that happen. Later that night, Gabriel drove her home again. She didn't argue this time. The desert wind howled outside, carrying dust and far-off sirens. He parked a block away from her apartment. Engine running low. You should pack a bag, he said. I'm not going anywhere. They're watching you, Isabel. They've been watching for weeks. She turned to him, shaking. And you? What are you doing? Saving me. He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, trying to make something right. Something in his voice cracked then. The sound of guilt, heavy and real. She wanted to ask what he meant, but he was already looking away. Eyes fixed on something in the rearview mirror. 2 headlights had appeared behind them, creeping slow. Too slow to be random. Gabriel's hand slid under his jacket. Get down, he whispered. The car behind them stopped. The silence stretched. Then, a flash of light. The crack of gunfire split the night open. Glass shattered. Isabel screamed. Gabriel slammed the gas pedal, tires screaming against the asphalt. Bullets tore through the air as they swerved into a side street, engine roaring. Her hands gripping the seat until her knuckles turned white. When they finally stopped, miles away on a dirt road outside the city, smoke rose from the hood. Isabel's chest heaved, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear his voice. You're safe, Gabriel said, reaching for her. You're safe now. She pulled away, shaking. What the hell was that? Who are you? He stared at her, rain and blood streaking his cheek. The man who should have died instead of your brother. She didn't sleep that night, not in the cheap motel room Gabriel found. Not with his jacket draped over her shoulders. Not with the sound of tires still echoing in her ears. Through the thin wall. She could hear him pacing, talking softly into a burner phone. Yeah, he said. She's with me. No, they can't touch her. Not while I'm breathing. His voice broke on that last word. When he hung up, he looked at her. And for the first time, she saw fear in him. Real fear, what aren't you telling me? She whispered. Gabriel leaned against the wall, running a hand through his hair. They don't just want what your brother took. Then what? His eyes met hers and the truth landed like thunder. They want you. The desert never really sleeps. Even at dawn, Tucson's edges buzzed, cicadas whispering. Far-off engines growling. The dry wind carrying dust and heat before the sun fully rose. In a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. Isabel sat on the edge of a narrow bed, staring at the faded curtains. Her hands still trembled from the gunfire that had ripped the night open hours ago. Gabriel stood by the window, shirtless, cleaning the cut on his shoulder with slow, careful motions. His silence was a presence all its own. Thick, steady, almost unbearable. Finally, she spoke. You said they want me. Why? He didn't look at her. Because you're leverage. Leverage for what? For me. She stared at his reflection in the window. So this isn't about my brother at all. It started with him, he said. It ends with me. The words hit her like a punch. The way he said them, calm, final, as if his fate was already sealed. She rose slowly, crossing the room until she stood just behind him. The morning light traced the scars on his back. Long, deep ones that told stories she didn't want to hear. You knew him, didn't you? She asked. He nodded once. Your brother was supposed to drive for me. Just one run. One night. He changed the drop location without telling anyone. When I found him, it was too late. Too late how? He turned then, eyes dark as smoke. He was gone. But what he stole wasn't. What was it? Gabriel hesitated. Information. Names. Enough to burn half the men I used to work for. And now they think I have it? Yes, her breath caught. Do you? He stared at her, silent for too long. Do you? The air between them thickened. She swallowed, looking away. No, I don't even know what you're talking about. But deep down, a memory flickered, the night before her brother died when he'd come home pale and shaking, his hands trembling as he'd slipped something into her bag. If anything happens, he'd whispered, you keep this safe, Izzy, don't ask questions. And she hadn't. She'd buried that bag at the bottom of her closet, never opening it again. Until now, her heart started to pound. By noon, they were on the road again, heading south into the open desert. The sky stretched endless, a pale blue sheet torn by mountains. Where are we going? She asked. To a place they won't look, Gabriel said. You sound sure. He gave a small, grim smile. I built it for that reason. She looked out the window, dust kicking up in golden swirls behind them. The silence pressed against her chest until she couldn't take it anymore. Why are you doing this for me? She asked softly. You don't even know me. I do, he said. I know what it's like to lose everything and still have to keep running. Was Luz like that? He flinched at the name. Where did you hear that? The chain on your wrist. He was quiet for a long time. She was my sister. She died because of me. Isabel turned toward him. What happened? He took a breath, his jaw tight. A rival crew sent a message. I was supposed to be there. I wasn't. They found her instead. The pain in his voice was raw. Not just guilt, but something deeper. A wound that never stopped bleeding. I promised her, he said, voice breaking, that I'd never let it happen again. To anyone. She didn't realize she was crying until his hand brushed a tear from her cheek. Don't, she whispered. Don't what? Don't make me care about you. His hand lingered for a heartbeat longer, then fell away. Too late, he said quietly. The safe house sat hidden behind a grove of saguaro cactus. Miles off the nearest road, a one-story adobe house with boarded windows and a rusted windmill creaking in the wind. Inside, the air was stale but cool. Gabriel locked the door behind them, checked every window, every angle. Only then did he relax enough to breathe. Do you trust me? He asked. She wanted to say no. But she couldn't. I don't know. Then that's more than I deserve. He set his gun on the table and unrolled a map. Routes. Coordinates, circled names. They'll find this place eventually, he said. We need to get ahead of them. Tell me what your brother gave you. Isabel's throat tightened. If I show you something, you have to promise not to use it. He met her eyes. You have my word. She reached into her bag, trembling, and pulled out a small black flash drive. It was in my closet. I didn't even know what it was until last night. Gabriel stared at it like it was a ghost. You shouldn't have kept this. Why? What's on it? Evidence, he said. Enough to take down every man I used to work with, and me along with them. Her breath caught. Then why not destroy it? Because destroying it won't change what we did. She shook her head. You say we like I had anything to do with it. You do now, he said softly. You're in it, Isabel. Whether you want to be or not. That night the desert was cold. The stars burned sharp and endless overhead. Isabel couldn't sleep. She stepped outside, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders, and found Gabriel sitting on the steps, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. Can't sleep either? She asked. He smiled faintly. Didn't know I was allowed to. She sat beside him, the blanket brushing his arm. For a while they said nothing. Just the sound of the wind, the hum of distant coyotes. Do you ever wish you could start over? She asked. He looked at her, eyes softening. Every day. But some of us don't get clean slates. Maybe you could. He turned to her then, close enough that she could see the reflection of stars in his eyes. And what about you? She hesitated. I stopped believing in new beginnings a long time ago. Then maybe I'll believe for both of us. The silence between them shifted, warm now, alive. When he kissed her, it wasn't sudden. It was slow, inevitable, like something the world had been waiting for. Her hand found his jaw. His fingers trembled against her waist. The desert wind carried their breath, their fear, their longing. When they pulled apart, she whispered, What happens now? He looked at her with a quiet sorrow that chilled her blood. Now, he said, we pay the price. The next morning Gabriel was gone. His gun was missing, his chain left on the table. The flash drive, gone too. On the wall, scratched into the dust with a knife, were 3 words, "Don't follow me." Outside, outside. The wind howled through the desert like a warning, carrying the echo of his voice, the one that had once promised she'd never walk alone again. Now. She was utterly alone. The Arizona desert stretched endless, pale gold and merciless under the afternoon sun. Isabel drove through it like a ghost, the hum of the old pickup truck steady but hollow. The flash drive was gone, and so was Gabriel. 3 days had passed since she'd woken up alone in that safe house, and every mile she put between her and Tucson only deepened the ache in her chest. She told herself she wasn't chasing him. She told herself she was running for her life. But deep down she knew she wasn't running away. She was running toward him. By the time she reached Nogales, the border town was buzzing with noise and heat. Spanish and English voices tangled in the air, music blaring from corner shops. The smell of roasted corn and diesel mixing together. She found a cheap motel near the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions. The woman at the desk slid a key across the counter without meeting her eyes. Isabel carried her bag upstairs and locked the door behind her. The room smelled of bleach and loneliness. She sat on the bed and pulled out her phone. Scrolling through the news, a headline caught her breath. Drug lord Gabriel de Leon wanted in federal operation. His photo stared back at her. The same eyes. The same calm that had once made her feel safe. Now they looked like something else entirely. The article said he'd vanished after leaking classified information to authorities. His cartel was in chaos. Dozens dead. Millions gone. And the flash drive, the one she'd handed him, had ignited the war. Her hands shook. He hadn't taken it to protect her. He'd taken it to finish what her brother started. To burn everything down. And he'd done it without her. That night, she dreamt of fire, of desert skies turning red, of Gabriel standing in the flames, reaching for her. When she woke, her shirt was damp with sweat and her heart thudded hard against her ribs. Outside, thunder rolled across the borderlands. The storm came suddenly, as they always did in the desert, fierce, electric. Alive. She stepped to the window and froze. Down in the parking lot. Leaning against a black SUV was Gabriel. Alive. Watching. Her knees went weak. For a moment, all the air in the room disappeared. She ran downstairs, barefoot, the rain slamming against her skin as she burst into the lot. "Gabriel!" He turned, eyes darker than the sky behind him. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should you." "You don't understand," he said. "They'll follow me here." She walked closer, soaked through, trembling. "You took the flash drive." "I had to. You lied to me." His voice cracked. "I saved you, by disappearing. By making me think you were dead." He stepped closer, rain dripping from his hair, his jaw tight with something that looked like regret. "If they thought you knew where I was, they'd kill you. This way, they don't care about you anymore." Her voice rose, trembling. "You don't get to decide that for me." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time the walls around him cracked. "You think I wanted this? I'm trying to end something that should have died with me years ago." She took another step forward. "Then let me help." He shook his head. "You already did. You gave me the key. It's almost over." A flash of lightning illuminated his face, and that's when she saw the gun tucked beneath his jacket. "Gabriel," she whispered, her stomach sinking. "What are you planning?" His silence was answer enough. They drove together to the outskirts of town, to a warehouse sitting alone at the edge of the desert. The rain had eased into a mist, and the air smelled like gasoline and dust. Inside. The floor was lined with crates, maps pinned to the walls, and a laptop open on a table. The screen flickered with coded messages, files loading, names appearing and vanishing. "This is what's left of them," Gabriel said, his voice low. "Every account, every shipment, every man who built their empire on blood." He inserted the flash drive. The cursor blinked once, twice, then began to upload. "What happens when it's done?" Isabel asked. "I disappear." "Where?" He didn't answer. "You can't just vanish," she said, tears in her voice. "You don't get to die a martyr." "I'm not dying a martyr," he said softly. "I'm dying a man who finally did something right." She stepped closer, her hands trembling as she reached for his arm. Then let me die with you. He caught her wrist, firm, gentle. No, you still have a chance to walk away. I told you, she whispered, voice breaking. You said I'd never walk alone again. His jaw clenched. And I meant it. That's why I can't let you follow me now. The computer beeped. The upload was complete. Outside, headlights appeared, 1, then 2, then 5. Engines roared in the distance. They found us. Gabriel said. He drew his gun and turned toward the door. Gabriel, he looked back once. When this ends, drive north. Don't stop until you see the lights of Phoenix. Don't do this, she begged. He smiled, small and sad. You made me remember what it feels like to be human. That's enough. Gunfire shattered the silence. The first bullet hit the window. Then the wall. Gabriel fired back, pulling her behind cover. The air filled with smoke and echoes, the sound of war in miniature. Isabel's hands covered her ears, her breath coming fast. Please, he grabbed her face, eyes burning. Go, now. I won't leave you. Go. She hesitated only a second too long. A shot rang out. Gabriel staggered. Blood bloomed on his side, dark and fast. She screamed his name, catching him as he fell. I told you, he whispered, voice fading. You'd never walk alone again. She pressed her hands against the wound, sobbing. Don't you dare say goodbye. But he smiled, faint, serene. It's not goodbye. It's freedom. Outside, sirens wailed, federal agents closing in. Lights flashing through the rain. Gabriel's fingers brushed hers, the last warmth leaving them. The storm raged on, and Isabel stayed there, holding him, until dawn broke over the desert and painted the warehouse in pale gold dot by the time the sun rose. He was gone, and Isabel Hart, the girl who had once walked home through Tucson's cracked streets, was no longer the same, because love had made her brave and loss had made her dangerous. That evening, as she stood outside the police blockade, wrapped in a blanket, watching the agents take his body away, she noticed something on his wrist, the silver chain he'd left behind before. Only now it had a second engraving. Her name. The desert was quiet again. Too quiet. 3 months had passed since that night in Nogales. The gunfire, the rain, the blood on her hands. Isabel Hart lived now in a small apartment in Flagstaff, surrounded by pine trees and the slow rhythm of mountain wind. It was the farthest she could get from the border without crossing into another life. She worked days at a bookstore, drank her coffee black, and told herself she was learning to breathe again. But every night when the sun sank behind the San Francisco peaks and the world went gold and gray, she felt it, the echo of him, Gabriel, his voice, his promise, you'll never walk alone again. She'd replayed those words. So many times they'd stopped being comfort and became a haunting. On a cold October evening, the first snow began to fall. Isabel stood outside the store, locking up for the night, the wind biting her cheeks. She tugged her coat tighter and crossed the empty street toward her car. The town was quiet, college kids gone home for the weekend, the smell of burning wood drifting from chimneys. When she slid into the driver's seat, her breath fogged the window. The radio crackled faintly with static before catching a station, an old Spanish song, the kind Gabriel used to hum under his breath. She froze. Her heart began to pound. She reached for the dial to turn it off, and then she saw it. A silver chain, hanging from her rearview mirror, her breath caught. She knew that chain. Every scar, every engraving. Only now there was a third word carved beside Luz and Isabel, redemption. She stepped out of the car so fast she nearly slipped on the ice. The parking lot was empty, or so it seemed. Then from across the street she saw movement. A man standing under the flickering lamplight. Her voice broke when she whispered his name. Gabriel. He didn't move. The shadows covered half his face, but she would have known him anywhere. The stillness, the way he carried silence like a second skin. Her throat tightened. You're dead. He stepped forward. I was supposed to be. She shook her head, trembling. No, I saw you. They let you see what they wanted, he said softly. There was too much heat that night. Too many eyes. The only way to keep you safe was to let the world think I was gone. The streetlight buzzed overhead, snow swirling between them. She could barely speak. You faked it? He nodded. The agents needed leverage. I gave them names, accounts, everything on that drive. They gave me a new name, a new life, but I couldn't live it without making sure you were safe first. She stared at him, tears spilling freely now. You could have told me. I wanted to, he said, stepping closer, his breath visible in the cold air. But if anyone saw me near you, they'd use you to find me. I had to disappear from your world to keep you alive in it. Her chest ached. So what now? He hesitated, the same pause, the same quiet war behind his eyes. Now I finish what your brother started. The people who ran the old network, they're rebuilding. I need to stop them before they reach you again. She laughed softly, bitterly. So it never ends. It can, he said. If we end it together. They drove through the night, out of the snow and back into the desert where it had all begun. The highway stretched empty under the moonlight. Ghostly cacti standing like sentinels on either side dot in the passenger seat. Isabel watched the lines of the road blur past, her fingers tracing the edge of the chain around her neck, the one he'd given her just before the agents arrived that night. The one she'd thought she'd buried with him. Why me? She asked quietly. You could have walked away from all of this. He glanced at her, eyes soft in the dashboard light. Because you're the only person who ever saw me as something more than what I'd done. She turned to him. And what are you now? He smiled faintly. Trying to be the man you believed I was. By dawn, they reached a stretch of desert road outside Yuma. Flat land, old railroad tracks, the horizon glowing red. Gabriel parked near a half-collapsed warehouse. This is where it ends, he said. Inside, the air was still, full of dust and silence. A single laptop sat on a crate in the center of the room. A map glowed on the screen lines connecting Mexico, Phoenix, Los Angeles. Beneath it, a message flashed in red, system armed. Transmission pending. Gabriel typed quickly, entering codes, overriding encryption. His hands moved with practiced certainty, but his jaw was tight, his pulse visible in his neck. What is that? Isabel asked. Their last server, he said. Every account, every name. When I send this, everything they built disappears. No money. No power. Nothing. And what happens to you? He met her eyes. I stop running. No, she said, shaking her head. Not like this. He looked at her, really looked, and for a moment the world held still. You said once you didn't believe in new beginnings, he whispered. Maybe this is mine. She took a step toward him. Gabriel, please. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. If anything happens, there's a letter in here. Don't open it until you're safe. She took it with trembling hands. Don't make me lose you twice. His fingers brushed her cheek. You never lost me. Then he hit enter. The laptop beeped, lights flashing. A progress bar filled slowly across the screen. 10%, 25%. 40%. Outside, engines roared, black trucks cutting through the dawn. They're here, Isabel said, panic rising. Gabriel drew his gun. Go, through the back. I'm not leaving you. Isabel. She grabbed his arm, eyes blazing. You once told me I'd never walk alone again. Don't make that a lie. For the first time, he smiled, not the hardened smirk she'd known, but something softer. Then stay close. The next moments were chaos. Gunfire, shouting, the crash of tires on gravel. Gabriel fired back, methodical and precise, covering her as the upload neared completion. A bullet grazed his arm. She screamed his name. Almost done. He shouted, 90%, 96%. 99%. Then the screen went black dot. The warehouse shook with the roar of an explosion outside. Dust filled the air. Isabel coughed, eyes burning. When the smoke cleared, Gabriel was gone. She stumbled forward, calling out, Gabriel! Until her voice broke. Then she saw it. The laptop still warm, the chain lying beside it, and a single message glowing faintly on the cracked screen dot. It's done. You're free. Weeks later, the headlines spread across the country. Cartel network collapses in coordinated leak, source unknown. No one mentioned his name. No one ever would, but in Flagstaff, every morning, Isabel walked through the pine-lined streets to the bookstore, the silver chain warm against her skin. And some nights, when the wind shifted, she swore she could hear his voice. Calm, steady, just behind her shoulder. You'll never walk alone again. She turned once, expecting to see him. Only the snow, only the trees. But her heart didn't ache this time, because somewhere, somehow she knew Gabriel de Leon was still out there. Not a ghost. Not a lord. Just a man finally walking free. And this time she wasn't afraid to follow.